I wanted to basically update all of you who are affected by the changes in Florida, give you the news and the information as we have it right now, and give you some suggestions about what to be doing in the next couple of days. So as we get underway, let me update those of you that may not know, if there are people out there that don't know. Late on Sunday night, about 10:30 or so Eastern time, the Florida Bar Examiners sent an email to all of the applicants for the August 19th exam. That's the exam this Wednesday. And they indicated that the test scheduled for Wednesday would not go forward. And the reason for that, though they weren't explicit about it, but the basic reason was that they couldn't get what they called a secure and reliable remote bar exam administration. Now, that's a result of not being able to work with their provider, ILG, to be able to proctor the exam. ILG is the same company that had bar exam problems in Indiana, Nevada, and Louisiana over the last couple of weeks, and those other jurisdictions all changed their format of the exam to open book, non-proctored tests in some form or another. And it seemed odd that Florida was continuing to press forward with ILG in light of everything that they knew last week, particularly in Nevada and Louisiana. And so they had scheduled in Florida a trial run of the software into working for today, Monday, and were unable to do that. As it became clear to them, I guess sometime late on Sunday night, that they weren't going to be able to do, that the live trial of the software wasn't going to work as well, they made the decision to pull the plug on the exam. Now, there's a lot we could say about what I've described in other places as the hubris and the arrogance of the Florida Bar Examiners. They probably knew this information before Sunday night at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. Nonetheless, that's when they chose to communicate to the applicant pool. And so the exam as of now for August 19th is certainly canceled. In addition, the examiners indicated that the second thing that they were going to do would be to attempt to reschedule the exam, but what they called a date to be determined in October. We don't know if that means the October 5th and 6th dates when everyone else in the country is doing Plan B, or some other date in October in which they would administer the same test that they plan to give on August 19th. My first take on this is that it's probably going to be a date separate than the October 5th and 6th exam, because Florida will continue to want to offer their own separate test, the one-day test. They've already got it ready. The test itself was ready, the questions and so on. They know how they want to score it. It seems to me that they will give that test then independently. Now, they could give that test on October 5th or October 6th if they wanted to, but I think the point to understand here is that they are not going to switch over to Plan B as far as we can tell. Doesn't seem to be what they're thinking about doing. That's as a result, I don't think you should modify your study to think now you've got multi-state bar exam types of questions. There's no indication that's going to happen. In fact, the examiners did say that the October exam will have the same content as the exam scheduled for August. So that to me is the clear indication that even if the test is given on the dates of Plan B, it will not be the Plan B from the national conference. So I just want to emphasize that. Everything you've been studying up till now is what you should continue to study. There is no indication of multi-state bar exam questions to be given on this Florida bar exam. So we'll wait and see what that date is in October. I'm guessing it depends on what they can do with either ILG or switching over to ExamSoft or coming up with some additional alternative. Could they, for example, decide to ultimately go open book? I've been saying I thought they'd go open book. Megan had been saying she thought the exam would be canceled, so she won. She was correct here. But I'm still not convinced that they aren't going to ultimately end up having to give an open book test. So I would keep that possibility at least open in your mind. As to a date when they'll announce the October exam, hasn't been given. They just said in the coming weeks, so you're going to have to stay flexible for that. They did indicate that when they announce that date, applicants for the exam would have the option to switch and postpone to the February 2021 exam. Our initial advice and direction here would be to not jump out of this test. Stay in if you can. And the reason for that is something we've detailed in other places. But essentially, we think that this is still going to be one of the best opportunities, particularly for repeat bar takers, to pass the exam. It'll be a one-day test rather than the two-day test. We would assume that in February 2021, you'll have a full multi-state and a full Florida exam. So this is a much shorter test. And we think a lot of people will leave this test thereby creating an opportunity with more choices or more options for people to pass. I think I've used the example of musical chairs. There will be fewer people in the game and more chairs available. So I think that it's a good opportunity if you can hang in there to take the exam. Certainly, if you decide that it's just too much for you or it doesn't fit in your schedule, and you're a student in our course, it's not a problem to defer. There's no difficulty there, and you can continue to study as you've been studying without any difficulty at all on our end. But our recommendation today is do not make that decision, don't postpone, but assume that you're going to take the exam in October. Now, I do want to make one other note about what the examiners wrote in their email. They indicated that they were creating a supervised practice program, which would follow their existing certified legal intern program. And this would be designed to allow limited practice under supervision from a Florida bar member. Now, I think it's important to note that this kind of program, where it's been implemented around the country, has only been available for first-time bar takers, and from typically only a limited number of schools, usually in that state's own jurisdiction. I think it is going to be a very limited program that's offered in Florida, which means that if you've taken the Florida bar and you've not been successful in the past, almost certainly you would not be eligible for this limited practice. And even for those who take the limited practice, all it really does is act as a bridge into the February 2021 exam, where you would have to take the exam and pass to actually become a member of the bar. So I don't think this solves a problem for most of the people that we're talking to. If you were a first-time taker from a Florida law school and you wanted to practice because you had a job opportunity that was contingent on you passing the bar, then I think this might be an opportunity for you for a limited period of time to do that. But of course, there's no guarantee that you're going to get paid or that you're going to get paid what you'd be paid as a member of the bar. Unfortunately, I think a lot of first-time takers are going to be disadvantaged by this. That's a switch, isn't it? And I expect we'll see a lot of first-time takers sit out the exam as it's given in October, and would expect to see those applicants back in the pool in February of 2021, whenever that test is given and however it's given. But the essential point to keep in mind here is that this limited practice program, supervised practice, will not impact any repeat bar taker as far as we know. And the examiner said details regarding eligibility and rules for participation will be announced when they're finalized. So when they're ready, they'll let you know. Until then, you're on your own. I think the timing that they would think about is mid-September. And the reason for that is that if they had given the exam at the end of July, results would have come out mid-September. So I think that's the gap that they're trying to fill in that regard. So that's the essence of what the examiners announced. Now, as to what you should be doing in order to study and move forward. The first thing I would tell you is that if you're watching me live today on Facebook, take the next couple of days off. Just stop studying entirely. And the reason for that is not because I think you should pout or have some moment of emotion. It's just the reality that you were aiming for a test on Wednesday. You build up for that. You're all excited for it, and now it doesn't happen. The studies that would occur Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week are going to be fairly non-productive, I think, for most people. And so I think it's just better to recognize that and step away for a couple of days, take a break, refresh yourself a little bit, get away from the studies. When you decide to return to your studies, I would keep it at a relatively minimal 3 or 4 hours a day tops study strategy. And what I would be doing at this point for students in our course is primarily to be going back over your outlines, either reading or photo reading them, working on your mind maps, and we've got those on the website for you to work with, going through lectures and subjects where you've been having difficulty. Those are all good steps to take. I think you should take this opportunity to do a much deeper dive on those subjects, going back through doing your photo reading or reading, going through the lecture, and then working on practice questions. But again, in a relatively leisurely form. You've got probably 60 days or so until the exam is actually going to occur. And I think taking a little bit of time off and then easing your way back in is probably the most effective thing to be doing. Now, we'll provide some additional direction to you later in the week as we get a better sense of what's going on. But I think it's important right now just for everybody to take their foot off the accelerator and back off. If you were planning to conference or talk to us about your last minute preparations, I would just cancel those meetings and let's wait until we're a little bit further along. If you had some calls still remaining to discuss essays, great. You're going to have an opportunity to use all of those now, and you can start scheduling those as soon as you want. But again, I would wait for a few days and catch your breath and just see where we are in all of this. I think it's also important to understand that at the end of the day, it's probably better that the examiners canceled the exam than to hold it, and to hold it in a way that would have been unfair because there was cheating going on, or that would have been a technological nightmare and caused people's scores to be invalidated. Those are really bad outcomes, and they're not the kinds of things that we want to see happen. And so while this is a disappointing, and that's a very mild term, outcome today, it's probably better than the alternatives that existed as we were heading over the cliff. And so I think it's important to express those things, to get that emotion out, and then to move on. Now, for students who are aware, we offered a master class called Abundance for Bar Study. If you've been through that master class, there are a lot of techniques in there that you could be using and should be using right now. The feelings exercise is one of them. If you've not been through the Abundance for Bar Study masterclass, I would strongly encourage you to register and do that now. I think this is a great opportunity for you to circle back around, reset yourself, and get ready for the next exam, whether it's October or February, that you're going to be taking. And so I really want to encourage you to look into that masterclass. The people that went through it found it extremely helpful, and I think it would be useful for anyone that right now is feeling the anger and the frustration and some degree of despair about the exam and what's happened. And all of that is perfectly normal, it's perfectly natural, and certainly to be expected. I think the key is to not linger in it. Today is a shock in some respects, although we've been saying this for some time that we thought this exam might get canceled. So it shouldn't come as a complete surprise to you. But nonetheless, it is a disappointment and it's frustrating. And so I think you've got to deal with some of those emotions, get through those before you return to your studies and start working. Again, we'll provide students in our course with fairly detailed direction as we get a handle on what we think is the best way to proceed. But take a little bit of time, back away just a bit, get into the Abundance for Bar Study Masterclass. That is one of the most productive things you could be doing. Something else I would suggest is that if you were not a photo reader, well, now's your opportunity to get into photo reading and add it and start studying. You have more than enough time to do that. And I would also say, whether you're a photo reader or not, using mind maps, this is a great time to begin working on your mind maps and preparing. I see this as an opportunity for our students to really be successful, because I do think a lot of people will abandon the test. And because I think a lot of the people that will abandon the test would have been folks that would have normally been the ones that you would expect to pass the exam because they were first-time takers. So getting that group of people out of the test creates an opportunity and an opening for everyone else, and I would treat it in that way. I also think it'll be important to see how the examiners set up this test. It will be an online exam. There's no doubt in my mind about that in October. And we'll see what kinds of modifications they make to the format, but we can be very clear at this point that there will be no modifications to the subject matter. So the things you've studied still are important. You don't have to study something different. You don't have to do something different. And I think that's important to keep in mind. All right, I hope that gives you some things to think about. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, email us, and we will respond. Reminder to all of you in our course that we will do our live Q&A on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern instead of Fridays. We're switching that. Comes at a good time, I think, for us to be able to talk about that. So Wednesday, 3 p.m., our live Q&A. Megan will be back with me. We'll be answering questions and talking about things that come up. In any event, wow, what a day. What a crazy day going on here. And I hope that this gives you some things to look at. Appreciate all of you being with me. Appreciate your hanging in there, and we will do everything we can to help you get through all of this. I'm really confident that it will work out, and it will work out to everybody's benefit. And it was a better alternative than the possibility of doing a bad exam or an unfair exam later this week. And I think it's really important to just keep that in mind. All right, everybody take care. Go enjoy the day if you can. And look, you don't have a test in 2 days. Have a nice lunch, have a nice cup of coffee with somebody that you love. Tell them thanks for putting up with you, and we've got another 60 days to go. All right, everybody. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.